Okay, hello, welcome to H3. The show is about health, hope, and happiness. My name is Alan Friesen, also known as the Acapellas, and with me is brother Scott Sweetman. And we have a special guest. How you feeling tonight, brother? How you
I'm
doing, sir?
good, thanks, Ellen. You bet. Always happy when you have people visit us.
Excellent. And we have a special guest with us tonight, Diana Kouprina. And Diana has got all kinds of lovely wisdom and insights to share with us. And we're ready to roll and have that conversation. So,
Stealing my money.
what's that, honey?
Stealing my money.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
I took the mail from upstairs and brought it downstairs, and there was an envelope with some cash that didn't belong to me, apparently. So
No,
We just lost our PG-13 rating, Al. Thanks, buddy.
all right,
Who you
Crola, there's Scott and Diana. Diana's our
Hi,
guest
guys.
tonight on
Hi,
H3.
Crola.
Hi.
Sorry to interrupt.
No, that was
I
fun.
need to pay somebody with this. So.
Okay, we have yes. Carry on.
Yeah, our production is done by two guys in a back alley here, so no, anything can happen in our show, anything at all.
All right. So, Diana, so lovely to have you with us tonight. And like, I probably should have done some research and learned more about you, but I didn't. All I know is that you're in Boston, Massachusetts, is where you are right now. And I didn't actually even read anything except Jesse said you need to interview Diana because she's amazing. So that's all I needed to know to have a conversation with you. So tell us about you.
The
Diana.
research is my job, so I checked it out.
Oh, good. Excellent.
It got cleared, I believe.
Yeah. Well, you're an amazing human being. I mean, human beings in general are pretty amazing, right? Like that's my experience through life. I don't really
unique, extraordinary, all different.
Yes.
Somehow interconnected.
Yes.
You come from a Russian background, is that correct?
A Soviet background.
Oh, sorry. Yes, that's a great distinction.
Well, it took me a long time to learn how to make that distinction. And because I never fit into the category of just being Russian because I'm not. My father's Armenian, my mom is Russian, and I was born in Tbilisi, Georgia. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing that makes me Russian in the Russian eyes. And at the same time, nothing really makes me Georgian, maybe more Armenian, but all that culture is combined. And that's how really it was in the Soviet Union before it collapsed and everyone went their separate ways. But at one point, the primary language was Russian. So that stuck with me. Although before I moved to the US, I spoke Armenian as well, but I lost it.
That happens. I studied Russian in university 100 years ago when I was young.
Oh, do you speak any?
I got to the point that I could watch a movie in Russian and come up with a fairly decent summary of what the movie was about. Enough to know that the English subtitles very seldom had anything to do with the Russian that was being spoken.
Yeah, that happens. Yeah.
But it's like you said, I haven't been able to speak Russian for years now. So I look at my textbooks every once in a while to get familiarized with the Cyrillic alphabet again. But
the alphabet is so different.
Yeah.
There's you either have to really stick with it or it's hard.
What did you
Russian
call it?
folk music is beautiful.
Is that what you call it?
Pardon me?
Cerulean? Is that what
Cyrillic.
it's called?
Yeah.
Cyrillic. Okay, sorry.
And
I interrupted you, Diana. What were you just saying? Sorry.
No, I don't remember. Russian.
I was saying Russian folk music is beautiful. Like the really sort of deep, reverberating, passionate.
Oh yeah. Well, all the different cultures. Georgian music is completely also different. Armenian music is very distinguished. I feel like they all have different cultures and just there's so much culture in it that it's just theirs and it's different and nobody else really mimics it that much, I want to say. Or maybe it's just nobody really delved into those post-Soviet countries and
young
brought
people
back that culture.
and I enjoy a lot of alternative music, and a lot of really interesting electronic and sort of quasi folk music has been coming out of those countries recently. And if not, most of them aren't on official labels, but you can find them on YouTube, and some really, really great stuff. And like you say, a lot of it is almost tribal because the people have been
Yes,
moving
yeah,
around so
that
much.
was the word. Yeah, tribal. Almost, it's just so. It's the culture they had for century, and it hasn't changed. Even if you look at a Georgian wedding or Armenian wedding, it's completely different from the white dress and the regular traditional wedding. But at the same time, it's still Christian religion, and it's just
Mhm.
Orthodox. If it's Christian, it's Orthodox, and then of course with Russia, Jews or Orthodox Christians.
Yeah, Russian Orthodoxy is beautiful as a religion. I mean, the art and the culture surrounding it, I find fascinating. It's beautiful.
The
Yeah,
churches are beautiful. Yeah,
yeah. Did your family bring much of that culture with you when they immigrated? You were
I
how
was
old?
9.
Yeah. So that's a tough question, right? When you're 9, it's like, yeah, I
Yeah,
don't.
well, it was just me and my mom, and my father was already here. He was receiving his master's at Yale University, so it was just me and my mom, and I want to say my mom packed 2 little suitcases, and that was it.
That's it. Yeah.
And we
Yeah.
left everything behind, but everything else was already falling. Um, there was just so much chaos happening. My grandmother also didn't end up staying in Georgia. She ended up moving where my uncle was, and he was already in Lithuania. So we all dispersed in different ways. The only thing that really remained was my father's family, who stayed in Armenia. But everybody else just dispersed and spread out. We have family thrown out all over. But I've been in the US for the past 30 years. I haven't left, nor have I had a passport. So maybe one day I'll
That
get
is
to
something
venture
interesting.
out.
Yeah, Alan wouldn't have read this, but you're a person without country, right? Is
I'm
that
a
the
person without country, yeah.
that isn't that? I think that's close to the official term, right? For some.
Stateless, but it's weird when I say stateless in the United States. People look at me and say, "You don't know what state you live in."
Yeah. I lived in Japan for 14 years, and Koreans that were brought over as sex slaves, basically comfort brides, is what they were called euphemistically. Their children don't have Japanese citizenry, and they can't get Korean citizenry, so they also live fairly normal lives, but they can never leave Japan. They can't go back.
Yeah,
As soon as they leave, they can't get back in. No country will take them in without a passport. So it's very interesting. You have a similar situation.
it's similar in that regard. The my thing is that I've been in the immigration proceedings within the U.S. for the past 30 years.
Oh my
My
goodness.
parents are U.S. citizens. My brother and sister are U.S. citizens. They were born here. My daughter is a U.S. citizen. My partner is a U.S. citizen. Everybody I know is a U.S. citizen. And I just happen to be in this unique situation just because I fell through the cracks of the immigration system. And
Mhm.
they do exist, especially in the U.S. They're all over. It's nobody really talks about them, and nobody addresses them. It's just one of those things that, okay, are you here legally? Yes. Or are you here legally? And those are the two only questions they're asked. But it's such a process.
Yes.
Um, and what happened with me is I fell in love and I got married and to an American. And you would think that would make me closer to getting a citizenship, but I was actually thrown out of my parents' petition. They were waiting for their green cards. We're waiting for our green cards. They're coming in the mail. We're all very excited. And for some damn reason, I decided to get married July 19th, 2008. And that
Right.
was right before they received their green cards. And I changed my name and I submitted that to USCIS. And they said, wait, you married an American citizen? You're not eligible anymore with your parents because you're out of age.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You reached of age, and on top of that, you married a US citizen, there's a totally different application for you. That's what you need to file. So I did, but I also had a backstory with that marriage. It was a very codependent, abusive. We were both addicted to a variety of drugs. Um, and when I met him, I was 19 years old. When we got married, I was
That says a
25.
lot right there, right? Yeah.
I feel I want to say marriage should have just been the separation, but because it was such a codependent relationship, I believe that I would cease to exist if we ever broke up. And that was true. I did feel that when that happened. And I felt it on every level because what happened is once we separated and he found himself someone else, and that's actually why we separated. He left me. It's not, I can't say, oh, I was the strong woman, I left. No, he left me. And that was even that my fear of abandonment right there was triggered by tenfold because I lived with his family. I visited my parents for Christmas, but I was with his family. I lived with this. And then when it ended, everybody just disappeared. Nobody talked. He wouldn't even talk to me. I had no idea what was going on. It was such a painful period. And on top of that, we were called for the immigration interview for my visa that we petitioned together. And I went and he didn't come. And 2 weeks later, I received a deportation letter.
Were you were able to appeal that, obviously?
Well, yes. Luckily, yes, of course. I was able to appeal it, hired an attorney. I felt very secure with how my paperwork was going. Unfortunately, I stumbled on another hurdle and I trusted the attorney a bit too much without doing my own immigration research and understanding the law. And that's a really big mistake, especially in the US. If you find an attorney who's saying, oh, I can do this. This is this. No. You got to know what they're saying they're going to do. And you got to understand immigration law to such a point that you got to know if your immigration attorney is just trying to take your money and he doesn't care if you get deported or not. He's just going to make a lot of money while the process is going. And he'll prolong it as much as he can. And then, well, sorry, it didn't work out. Bye.
We have a similar problem in Canada. My father married a Chinese woman, a wonderful, wonderful lady. And we have a large Chinese community in Vancouver. So she was coming in through Vancouver, and they paid for an immigration lawyer there, exactly as you said. And they spent $25,000. Some, not a lot for lawyers, but a lot of money for them. And then just one day he said, yeah, I don't feel like doing this anymore. Here's your file. Good luck. And that was it. And when we talked to the authorities, they said it's a big problem in certain immigrant communities where these lawyers are really just front people for organized crime. They just collect the money and
it's so easy to do because immigrants, I was too scared to understand immigration law. When this happened to me, I was shaking. I came from I am so American to I don't understand this. And on top of that, I do not understand law. Did not study law in college. I don't understand it. I don't understand what each sentence is saying, what it means towards me. Nothing. Like blank.
Wow.
And I relied on the help of and so did my parents. We all relied on this. This person has to know the answers. And he also said, well, before I became an immigration attorney, I was an immigration officer. I decided to switch sides, but he didn't know any of immigration law. And I learned this later. It took me 14 years, but I studied law. I studied US law. I studied the torts. I studied the civil law. I did this all on my own. And then I studied immigration law. So right now I can tell you which paperwork to file, how to file it, where to file it, who to call, who not to call, and the whole process. I wrote my own petition, I like to call it my legal dissertation because it really felt like one. I put all my knowledge and all my research into it was 80 pages long, 40 pages of evidence saying I've been here since this, I deserve this because of this. And I'm very proud of it. And now I'm just waiting for a response. But this is the fastest I've actually had a response from USCIS. I submitted my petition. Within 30 days, I got a receipt that they had it. I got called for fingerprints, and now I'm just waiting for my interview. So I'm just floating.
How long ago was it that you submitted it?
I submitted August, I want to say August 27th.
Of this year?
Yeah, this year.
And then they acknowledged receipt of it. They've gone down and done the fingerprinting.
Fingerprints, and now it's the interview.
Interesting. So, and you're optimistic. You figure you got this nailed now. You're going to become a U.S. citizen.
Well, it's not that easy. They're going to grant me, hopefully, asylum, and then I can file for further progress, further green card, citizenship, and so on.
Got it. Diana, this is a, and I hope we get to talk about your book too, and we should have you come back if you have time. But so Alan does a lot of champion in our community for helping people. I mean, you can look at us. We're a couple of white, middle-aged men. And yeah, of course, we've had trials and tribulations, but the system pretty much works in our favor, right? I mean, that's a given. And Alan and I like finding out about who it doesn't work for, because part of being in the situation we're in is you don't realize there's a lot of people who are outside of that. You just assume that everyone benefits from that fair and just system that you benefit from, right?
Yes, and I agree with you because I was there. I was raised in the middle class. I didn't think anything of it. My husband also upper middle class. There was I never thought about immigration, and I never thought what people go through. I did read books on immigrants because I wanted to connect and understand, well, how did you deal with this culture shock? Nobody's talking about it. I need to know because I don't get it. This is really hard. So yeah, I read books, but I wasn't in an immigration community. I didn't understand what people were going through. I just knew if you get the immigration, you need an immigration attorney, and then everything gets solved. That's it. It doesn't work like that. And there's a lot of people who don't have the resources, don't have the knowledge, don't have a college background. I have a private school background, so I'm very well educated. And that education helped me do the research and study on my own. But I can't imagine someone who doesn't have that background or wasn't that fortunate in their educational journey where they can say, oh yeah, I understand law. This makes sense. I get it now. I understand exactly how to write a cover letter, and I completely understand how to write 30 pages attesting to who I am, what I'm scared of, why I deserve asylum, why US, here's my evidence. And you have to do it eloquently and beautifully. And luckily, I'm also a writer, so I think I put everything in. I quoted JFK. I touched some Martin Luther King. I mean, I piled it on.
Those are two good ones, yeah.
So tell us about, Scott, how about we just have her interject about her book, and then we can come back to the book later. Does that make sense?
Sure, yeah. The Girl with Pink Hair, right?
Book, yes.
Yeah, what is your book called again, Diana? Yeah, what's your book called, Diana?
I wrote my children's book when I was discovering my voice. So Adventures of the Girl with Pink Hair is really about a girl who is trying to learn who she is by screaming, shouting, and usually parents, and as a parent, of course, I'm at fault with it. We tell our children, well, just, be quiet, or you're too loud, or this is just frustrating. So in the book, of course, the child gets a visit from a magical unicorn, and the unicorn teaches the child to express your emotion through song and dance. And for me, I thought I'm writing about my daughter. She inspired me. She's so vocal. Oh, this is about my kid. And then the more I thought about it, I realized it was about me, and I was doing justice to the little girl that I was, who didn't have a voice and didn't have really many options growing up in the Soviet Union. You don't. It was very authoritarian. Kids did as they were told. They listened. Don't write with your left hand. If you did, you got smacked with a ruler. All of that sticks. I don't remember all the details, of course, but it always stuck with me, that voice, and I never could find it. And it wasn't until I began my healing journey and discovery of the self that that book just came out, and I was like, oh yeah, this makes sense now. I understand why I wrote it. Because when I first wrote it, I was like, I don't know. Will people actually feel it? Will they connect with it? Maybe I'm really pushing it. Positive parenting and all that. So I really put it aside, and I picked it up again when I realized, oh, that little girl's me. So I don't know. Maybe they will identify with me or the book or both, and maybe it will be sweet. And so I'm continuing on that children's book journey. So there will be another. I'm working with an amazing illustrator. His name is Kelly Shelton, and you can visit his art on Facebook. And it's just, he's phenomenal. So I love this project. I'm also writing my memoir right now. And that's really just my testament of releasing all that pain that was always inside of me, and I never spoke about it. And at one point I wouldn't even write about it. I didn't pick up a pen for 14 years. I just
What was the catalyst that took you from that? Pain is disabling, and everyone who's experienced a lot of pain and trauma, there's a point where you're disabled, right? Where you just doesn't feel like you can go past that, and there's usually something that either we force through that, or something helps us get through that. Is there a point or something that you felt really helped you get through that period of traumatic pain and historical trauma?
yes. And before I get into that, I'm gonna be cute. My daughter just wrote this, and she said, "Can I say hi?" I don't know if you can read it, but come say
Oh, is she
hi.
there? Is
Oh,
she there?
please.
Yeah,
Come say
there
hi.
you
Hi,
go.
how are you?
Say hi. Yes, good girl.
Great. And what is your name, young lady?
Paulina. Paulina.
Paulina?
Yeah.
What a
Well,
great
Paulina.
name.
Yeah.
That is beautiful. Yes, and you're
Alan
here.
and I both have daughters. He has one, and I have twins. So we
Oh,
are.
twins are fun. My brother and sister are twins.
Oh, wonderful! Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great.
And so you're hanging out with mom and guiding her along this interview, are you,
She
Paulina?
is. She actually did my hair.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Well done.
Beautiful.
She did.
Okay,
Thank
I'm
So,
gonna
you.
go draw. Bye.
Okay. You may go draw. Bye bye.
Yeah, that's
thanks,
wonderful.
Paulina. Where do
Um,
people buy your books, Diana?
pardon, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, where do people buy your book?
Oh, Barnes and Noble. It's an ebook. It's right on my Facebook page. It's right there. I post it. Also, you can connect with me on Facebook. It's the best way. It's the easiest way.
Okay.
Diana Kouprina, easy to find. And I also have 3 groups where I try to connect people, because I feel as though through connection, we're able to provide opportunities. And so my first group is called Let's Connect. It's a private group, and because it is a private group, I opened a public group that's called Create and Connect and Amplify. And for the neurodivergent community, because I'm a part of it, there's neurodivergent superpowers,
Wow.
also on Facebook. So
Nice.
I that was the social domain I started playing with, and I stuck with it because it's so easy for me to branch out. So maybe in the future I'll branch out to Instagram and others, but right now I'm just still flowing with the vibes on Facebook.
That's
And,
great.
and how are you neurodivergent?
Oh, in so many ways.
In so many ways?
I have ADHD. I suspect I'm also on the spectrum. And growing up, I didn't understand this. I didn't know it. I never would have thought it. I wasn't even diagnosed with ADHD until quite recently, but that made so much sense. I was like, yes. Oh, they
Right.
get me. But growing up, I was a very determined child, and I was the one. It wasn't my parents who sent me to private school. I sent myself to private school. I know not many kids do that. I did. I got a full scholarship, and I felt like I was a genius. But once I got there, the culture shock of it all was, oh wow. I'm
Mm,
going to school with some very interesting, amazing people, but how I did not fit in. It was a tough fight. And then what really broke me was I was drug roofied. Roofied is the right term, I believe. I was roofied and raped at the age of 12, and
oh,
then again at the age of 18. The
oh,
time at the 18, I blamed myself because I didn't say no. My body just froze. It literally, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't move it, but I was in it. Well, I wasn't really. I was floating around it, but I remember it.
mhm.
The first time I knew that I blamed myself for a long time, but eventually I learned that, okay, well, they're bad people and this was a bad thing. And that's what happened. It took me a lot longer to also realize that it wasn't me getting drunk. Um, they gave me a drink and it had drugs in it and I couldn't move my body. I
Yeah.
passed out. I don't have memories. I don't even have the memory of how I was brought home. My mother put me in a cold shower and she was freaking out because my
Of course,
I
yeah.
was just non-functional.
Right.
It was beyond someone who's extremely drunk.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe the way we didn't deal with it. So all that, and I didn't deal with it. I never talked about it. I talk about it so much now, but back then I never talked about it. And by the time I reached ninth grade, I was suicidal. Um, I was in boarding school. I cut myself a little too deep. Uh, luckily, a dorm room mother found me and they called the hospital, and then I was placed in a mental hospital for, I want to say 2 weeks to a month. I don't, again, this is where my mind is. I'm working on the details, trying to remember for my memoir. So it's really healing to talk about it. And I really want to stress that for anyone who's been a victim um, of I want to say horrendous, but that's not even a fair enough word. Traumatic is not horrific, maybe, but the pain that the body and the mind that they go through, it's such a disconnect. It's such a loss, and it's so hard to get it back. It's incredibly hard. I don't know if I was lucky that my husband decided to abandon me, brought me back to my parents' house, and said, "Here, keep her." Um, if that really would save me, or it was just the universe sort of said, we have better plans for you. We have something else in mind for you. And maybe I did have to go through all the suffering I did to get to this point. Do I regret it? No, I really don't have regrets.
Do
I
you ever ask
struggled with
yourself,
having a lot of regrets to coming to, I don't have any regrets because I wouldn't be the person I am today. I wouldn't be having this conversation. I wouldn't be trying to have a fight for lives and for people. I wouldn't be trying to help people. I wouldn't be understanding them. I wouldn't be as empathetic as I am. And everything, what I went through taught me that. And maybe I am fortunate. Maybe it is because my mind is quite unique, and maybe it's something in it that really triggered this survival response and this final hope. Because once I got to my parents' house, that was it. Everything stopped cold turkey. Drugs for me stopped cold turkey. Everything. I didn't go seeking them. I just went through the process. I know I traumatized my little sister. We've talked about it, and she forgives me. But I went through grand mal seizures, and she saw them, she witnessed them. Um, some of the drugs I was coming off were actually prescription because I was prescribed for anxiety. I was placed on benzodiazepam at the age of 18 for anxiety attacks. And throughout the years, the dosage always got upped because I said it wasn't working. And well, at one point they don't because
Of course.
they're addictive. That's why. And at one point I was on 2 milligrams 3 times a day. So that's six milligrams.
It's a lot.
That's a lot. And I was functioning.
Wow.
And sometimes I would even do a bump of heroin just to get the euphoric state.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something. And then when I was with my husband, he had take home methadone. And apparently methadone is just heroin, except it's legal.
Heroin's really difficult, I hear, to deal with. Like it's
I will say this. I was lucky I never used the needle. So maybe that was what saved me because I never touched the needle and I didn't get that final pleasure or euphoria that people get, that I got. I felt like I could fly and and at the same time, my mind would be just had so many ideas. I was in my body because I couldn't be in my body. I disassociated to such an extent by that point that the only way I felt that I was in my body having conversations and I could be social was if I was under the influence of something. I needed a strong substance to weigh me down because I couldn't function otherwise.
And what again, just if you want to share it with us, what was the catalyst that helped you change that path? It's never so easy as one moment, right? Like, and I understand that, but
it wasn't just one. It wasn't a one thing. I can't say that after I overdosed on methadone. That's why I say methadone is just like heroin. Nobody really tells you that, but you get the same high. It's also time released. So you get it at one bang point. I didn't realize that when I did this. My husband was asleep and I snuck into the safe where it's kept, and I opened the bottle and I took a sip and I'm like, okay, it didn't do anything. So I waited, still didn't do anything. So I took another sip. I drank a lot of it. He had a very high dose. I want to say he was up in the 100 milligrams. I probably drank half of it. I remember everything I did up until I fell asleep. And I remember how I got woken up. But I don't remember that I died.
And you were dead
they
for a
said
few
that
minutes,
I died
right?
for a good amount of time. I was very lucky to come to and have everything functioning and just be functioning. They were a little surprised about that. They said I was extremely lucky. And how I ended up in the hospital was because my husband woke up and realized that I either was dying or I was overdosing. And instead of calling the ambulance, he called his mother.
Hopefully she called the ambulance.
No, they put me in the car and drove me there.
Wow. Wow. Okay. And so how long is that you were actually dead for? Do you know? Like
a little under 5 minutes. I believe they said it was 3 minutes. I don't want to exaggerate either, so I'm trying to really stick to the facts here, but I believe it was around 3 minutes, they said. And it's just because it took time. It was, if they called the ambulance, I probably wouldn't have died, but because they didn't, because the fear was that he would get arrested.
Right.
And he was previously in prison for drugs, and this would have just, because I remember when I woke up and I was so cold and I didn't realize where I was, and it was just a really, really freaky situation. I just didn't want to be there anymore when I woke up. And the first things that were said to me is just make sure you don't tell the doctors where you got the drugs from, where you got the methadone from.
Wow, what an experience. We have a problem with substance abuse and overdose in our community. And a lot of it, like you say, is getting help is, of course, the people are scared of legal or,
Well,
criminal.
the legality of it all also, once you make something illegal, then there's a threat that you go to prison, and you do. And this, of course, affects people who are addicted. And the funny thing is, half of the middle class community that I hung out with that got addicted, we got addicted to oxys. Those were prescription pills everybody could sneak around. I really got hooked on also a prescription medicine. At one point, it was just wasn't working for me, and the doctors weren't upping my dose. And I found something else that could calm me down, so I wasn't continuously shaking, because my anxiety was that bad. I could not control my body at all. My mind and the self-hate that went on in my mind at the time, the only way I could get out of it was by being completely high on a substance.
So Diana, now, like, all of those experiences happen, and there was obviously some that were horrific. I think were your words, and
Yes.
it's to me.
Yeah.
But you kind of view that as these are part of the journey that has shaped me and kind of made me who I am today. Right? Is how you perceive it.
Yes.
Tell us about your self-care now. How does Diana look after Diana now?
Well, I can tell you this: when I wake up in the morning and I look in the mirror and I go, "Hey, you're cute." Before, I used to wake up in the mirror and say, "Hi, your nose is too big. You have horrible acne." And I had horrible acne because I have PCOS. I was just ended up finally going on Accutane, treating it, but really cystic acne. So every time I would wake up in the morning, top of everything else, there was this. And I really hated the way I looked. I never thought I was attractive. I used to refer to myself as a Monet painting. From far away, attractive, up close, just bunch of dots. And I look back at it and I'm like, oh, you poor girl.
Yeah.
Because I was like that poor girl. So I continuously, even through my writing, I go back and I visit myself in those times. And I really focus on giving myself that love that I didn't give myself back then.
Right.
And it's so important. I can't stress it enough to continuously to have this love with yourself and to go back, especially if you have trauma. You got to break to heal again. And what I mean by that is not a physical break. It happens in the mind. You have to go back and you have to revisit and you have to feel. You have to feel it. And that's the most painful part. But once you can feel what happened to you, that trauma, that pain, you can feel it again and you can say, was it my fault? I'm safe now. It's not happening to me now. This poor child I love you. It wasn't your fault that this happened to. And it's okay.
Right.
And
So
you got to
often
feel that. And then you got to feel the love. Because for a long time, even though I wasn't using drugs and I had my miracle baby and everything seemed going well, I still wasn't able to connect with myself fully. And the final disconnect that I had to heal was allowing myself to feel. And I know it sounds a little, what do you mean feel? But I mean literally feel.
Yeah.
Like watch puppies running around and you have tears of love in your eyes. I don't just feel like a child feels. Crying. I couldn't cry never cried. I had to be tough and strong. Now I'm like, oh, please cry. Have a good cry. It's good for you. You need it. And the other thing, and this takes time, it's being honest with yourself, accountability, responsibility, and finding your purpose. And my father, who's a very, very, very smart man, used to always ask me that. And I used to get so mad at him. Like, what do you mean my purpose? My purpose is to exist. What do you mean my purpose? Or I'd say, well, I want to help people. And he's like, well, how are you going to do that? And I get so upset. What do you mean? But it was just and now I look back at it. I'm like, well, I know how I'm going to do that. I have a voice. I can connect with people. Now I can look back and I say, well, my purpose is this because I really found it. I proved to myself, yes, I'm a writer. I look back now and I revisit with myself and I have these fun little memories of when even I was high, and I have these random thoughts being like, have I struggled enough to be a good writer now? And I remember these thoughts at the age of 19. So today I revisit that girl at 19. I'm like, yeah, you're good. You did good.
Yeah.
You got paid.
What an amazing journey. That's wonderful.
Wow. And so your purpose now is using your voice as an author to share basically your messages of like self-love and self-care
Yes.
and
Yes. And well, as an author, I feel like I need to do this story justice because I'm not the only one that this has ever happened to. Well, I can't be. There's too many people. Also in the US, there's 218,000 stateless people. I've never met one. I know 218,000 out of millions and billions is a little bit low, but my question would be, well, why do they even exist in the first place? Why do we have stateless people in the US?
Yeah.
I know we're fighting this legal, illegal, but why aren't we going to the root of the problem and saying, well, some of these laws just don't work?
Yes.
We've reached a different era of immigration and how migrants work, how they travel, how wars can displace people, how some of these laws don't work in a sense. For me, it didn't work. I was supposed to get my green card with my parents. Why didn't I? Why was I? Why is it because I didn't marry an immigrant? I married an American. Why is that a denial? And it's in the law. It's in black and white. And as brilliant as my father is, he also, when I was talking about, okay, well, I want to get married, he said, well, maybe it will be even better for your green card because we've been waiting for so long. Because after 9/11, everything just stopped. And my father, because he traveled so much as an international negotiator, he had to go through this thing called name check, and that took about 7 years of our wait to receive our green cards. And like I said, if I just waited, or maybe if I didn't get married, maybe that is one regret. But again, not so much of regret, just so much of an understanding that one tiny little change would have completely been different. Or if
So
I didn't
do
say
you
I
think
do, it
do
would
you
be completely different.
True, very much so. I agree entirely. And so now, with what you've gone through, and now that you are rectifying your status as a stateless person, do you think that you will be able to and wish to support others who are in
Well,
their
that's my hope.
yeah.
Again, my vision in life is to open nonprofits where I help survivors of domestic abuse, of survivors of trauma, victims, anyone who needs that help, and of course, provide services in immigration law and the education that no other attorney. I mean, I'm happy to help anyone that's really struggling. I'll take a look. I'm not for free. I'm happy to do it just because I understand your pain and you probably want answers and you just are too scared, or I'll help you reread whatever you need and explain it to you in that sense. But ultimately, once I'm fully in a good place, that is the ultimate vision.
Nice, beautiful. And
Fantastic.
I'm you probably know Misha Zolodnitsky. Do you know?
Yes.
Yes, she put a little like on for the show. She's watching.
Oh,
So shout out to Misha. All right. And Jesse's watching, of course, too. Hey, Jesse. So yeah.
does that
Yeah.
count? I when Jesse's watching, I don't
Yeah.
know if I get that excited. It's just he's always watching, right?
Yeah, he's always
Jesse
watching.
gets excited though. He genuinely loves being able to give everyone a voice. So
Yes,
yeah.
and that was a wonderful thing. That I was like, oh, yes, I can do this. And for me, this is also such amazing practice because, again, this is my voice and I'm trying to restore it. So, for anyone who's watching, I hope they can understand that this is also a learning experience for me and for anyone who has struggled or have come to this point where they say, well, I want to discover my voice. Start talking. Do it in front of a few people, get interviewed, get filmed, see how you feel and see how you like the sound of your voice. A friend of mine posted on Facebook the other day. It was a fun meme and it said something along the lines of, if you like the sound of your voice on video, you've made it in that self-love. You
Yeah,
love
yeah,
yourself now. And I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
I'm
So
trying to
true.
get there.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, we really appreciate you sharing with us because I think there's two sides of that, right? And you have to find your voice, but you also have to find your ears. And I know that
Yes.
that's something that Alan and I really enjoy about our show is that we spend a lot of time listening too. And it's not just talking. And when we get an opportunity to listen to someone like yourself that's open and honest, and I think there'd be a much greater opportunity for people if more people were honest about their own, you know, troubles
The
and the mistakes
hardship,
they
we all
made.
struggle. Yes, we all struggle. It's okay. And there's nothing wrong with failure. I enjoy failing now because it's a learning lesson. Okay, I made a mistake. I didn't like how this worked out. Tomorrow I'll make it better. It's okay. And again, my mind before it will get stuck on the failure. I was such a perfectionist, and I would get stuck on the failure, and then I get on the cycle of loop of anxiety, and I was just running around chasing myself, being and just not accomplishing anything just because of that. And it's a really tough place to be, and I completely understand those who are in it. And if just by listening to me, it helps them, if I've given them any sort of sense of, hey, you can do it too. I failed so much, you can do it. If I can be the example of failure to give someone a little bit of hope, I'm happy to do it.
Yeah, and
Well,
as you
you
said, the failure isn't actually a failure, it's a learning experience,
It's
right?
a learning experience.
That's reality, and you
How far
always
you
learn.
want to fall?
Yeah,
I fall.
yeah,
I remember for my college essay, I wrote that for me, life is like a roller coaster because I just go up or I go down, I go up or I go down. And of course, that was also a sign of me having ADHD back then, but
right.
no one was really talking about it.
Yeah,
It wasn't
yeah,
for girls then.
yes, yeah.
Girls have it now, but they couldn't have it before.
No.
Um, but it was always like that. And for anyone who has that roller coaster, it's you really need to focus on just establishing your balance, setting boundaries. Those are hard. Stop people pleasing, please yourself.
You
That's
have a beautiful daughter, and she was wonderful. She joined us here. How do you think things have changed for her? I mean, her world that she lives in, or do you think pretty much it's the same? For people that may have gone through similar things that you have. Is there improvement? I guess is what I'm asking. Do you think the world is getting better?
improvement in, well, I don't know about improvement in society. I think so. I wouldn't have gone back to get my MBA if I didn't think there would be improvement in business. There's definitely improvement in the sense that businesses are improving. A lot more businesses are taking accountability and following the CSR model of corporate social responsibility. Um, there's a lot of social entrepreneurs, and that's my aim, to be one of them. And I hope others who've struggled or who found their ways, let's connect. Let's all be social entrepreneurs. We can heal the world. So is it going to get better? I hope so. Are we fully there? No, I think this is the beginning of it. I'm happy to be a part of it, but I really felt it now, especially being in business school. I feel it more so in that sense that there is a shift, but it's just depends how vocal we are as a society, as individuals, about the changes we want and to see how they would work. And it's again a change of a social contract with businesses. So in that loop, yes, there's hope. As far I see my daughter, I know she's doing better than I did, and for me, that's enough.
Parents, that's what we
She
hope,
is such
right?
a happy little girl, and I just love it. And she's so creative. She's so talented. She is an artist. She is a writer. I see it all, and I'm just trying to nurture it. She has that brilliant mind, and I'm just happy to just be witnessing it. And I really do hope that for her, when it's her time to thrive, she'll have that opportunity to thrive. But I also want her to know that if she fails, that's fine. You fail.
Well,
Please
she's
fail.
got a lovely example in her mama who's expressing her voice and found her voice and is using her voice, and that's amazing. So I'm sure Pauline.
It's a teaching lesson. She also likes doing YouTube videos. I will say she's better than me. So I've been taking lessons from her.
Maybe she can come visit us on the show.
Yeah, I think she'd like that.
Alan and I learn a lot from little people. We
Oh
coach
yeah,
and
so much
involved
to
in-
learn.
Yeah.
Especially when they start being at this really fun age, when they have so much to say and so much to share, and they already feel like they're little adults. So much fun.
Although there's a couple of times I've regretted making my daughter so outspoken and self-reliant.
Strong. Yes,
Yeah,
yes.
they put old
yeah.
dad in his place. It's like, hush, dad, I got this. So.
Yeah, yeah, that does happen. But still, we go with it.
Yeah.
Well,
Unfortunately,
Diana.
I think we're out of time, Alan.
Yeah, I think so, Diana. We it's been awesome having you on. We put your Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that.
And so reach out to Diana and learn more from her. Her books are available as well. And then the big manuscript you're working on now, the big document you're working on, that's not published yet.
It's not really. No, I'm giving myself a year, and I'm actually really meeting my goals right now. So I'm very excited. I got my first 80 pages in of my memoir. So I got through the hard parts that were really hard to write. So now this is the fun part.
Nice,
Wonderful.
nice.
Well,
So thank you very much for joining us. Scott, take us home there, brother.
Thank you. From the Acapellist, Alan Friesen, and our fantastic guest. Thank you for sharing with us tonight, Diana. And I really wish you all the best. And thank you for being an amazing person. And
thank you for having me. And thank you for allowing me to share my voice. I'm very vocal about voice. So for anyone who wants to connect with our voices, just connect with me on Facebook.
Thank you very much, Diana. So until next week, visit us the same place, same time for H3. Thank you, everyone. Take care. Be well.
Get him out,